It is February 1st, 1979. A plane lands at Tehran's Mehrabad airport. Inside is a 76-year-old cleric who has not set foot in Iran for 15 years. His name is Ruhollah Khomeini, and the crowd waiting for him is estimated at 5 million people. The streets of Tehran are unrecognizable. Women in chadors line the boulevards. Men weep openly in the streets. A revolution is not coming. It has already arrived. But here is what most people never ask. How did one of the most modern and westernized nations in the Middle East end up here? And who is really responsible? The answer does not begin in 1979. It begins in 1953, with a democratically elected leader, a country on the edge of greatness, and a decision made in Washington and London that changed the Middle East forever. To understand 1979, you need to understand 1953. And to understand 1953, you need to meet one man. His name was Mohammad Mosaddegh. He was 71 years old. He wore simple suits. He sometimes gave speeches from his bed, and he was the most popular leader Iran had ever seen. Mossadegh was not a radical. He was not a religious extremist. He was a lawyer, a Democrat, and a nationalist. He believed Iran's oil belonged to the Iranian people, not to the British. For decades, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company had controlled Iran's oil. Britain took the vast majority of the profits. Iran received almost nothing. Mossadegh had a simple message. That ends now. In 1951, the Iranian parliament voted to nationalize the oil industry. Mossadegh became prime minister on that promise. The Iranian people celebrated in the streets. Britain was furious. They called it theft. They imposed a total embargo on Iranian oil, and they started making phone calls to Washington. Washington was not interested in democracy. Washington was interested in oil. And in 1953, Washington was also very interested in one word: communism. The CIA told President Eisenhower that Mossadegh was a communist threat, that if Iran nationalized its oil, the Soviet Union would move in. It was not true, but it was enough. Operation Ajax was born. The CIA and British intelligence MI6 planned it together. The goal was simple: remove Mossadegh, restore the Shah. CIA agents flooded Tehran with money. They paid newspaper editors to print anti-Mossadegh stories. They hired thugs to cause riots in the streets. They bribed military officers. They organized mobs to attack pro-Mossadegh supporters. On August 19, 1953, the coup was executed. Mossadegh was arrested at his home. He was put on trial by the Shah's government, found guilty of treason against the crown, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. After that, he was placed under house arrest. He never returned to public life. He died in 1967, alone, in his home. The man who tried to give Iran its oil back died a prisoner in his own country. The Shah was back on his throne, but he had not returned as a leader. He had returned as a puppet, and he knew it. To keep his throne, he needed to keep Washington happy. And to keep Washington happy, he needed to crush any opposition. So in 1957, with direct help from the CIA and Israel's Mossad, the Shah created SAVAK, the Iranian secret police. SAVAK was everywhere, in universities, in newspapers, in mosques, in people's homes. Estimates suggest SAVAK had up to 60,000 agents and 3 million informants. In a country of 30 million people, torture was routine. Political prisoners disappeared. Those who spoke against the Shah risked everything. Meanwhile, the Shah spent billions on weapons and palaces. Iran's oil money flowed out of the country. The poor got poorer, and the gap between the Shah's Iran and ordinary Iranians grew wider every year. By the late 1970s, the anger was reaching a breaking point, and the Shah had made one catastrophic mistake. He had silenced every secular voice of opposition, every Democrat, every intellectual, every moderate. The only voice he could not silence was the one coming from the mosques, and that voice belonged to Ruhollah Khomeini. Ruhollah Khomeini was not a new face. He had been preaching against the Shah since the early 1960s. In 1964, the Shah had him arrested and exiled, first to Turkey, then to Iraq, and finally to France. But exile did not silence him. His sermons were recorded onto cassette tapes, smuggled into Iran by the thousands, copied and passed from hand to hand. In a country where every newspaper was censored and every political party was banned, the cassette tape became a revolution. By 1977, the protests had begun. First small gatherings, then larger marches, then millions in the streets. The Shah responded with force. On September 8, 1978, a day that became known as Black Friday, soldiers opened fire on protesters in Tehran's Jaleh Square. Hundreds were killed. It did not stop the revolution. It accelerated it. By January 1979, the Shah realized it was over. On January 16, 1979, he left Iran. He told his people he was going on vacation. He never came back. He died in exile in Egypt in 1980. 2 weeks after the Shah left, Khomeini's plane landed. And the rest, as they say, is history. So what happened next? Khomeini had promised freedom. He had promised democracy. He had promised that religious scholars would not govern. Those promises did not last long. Within months, the Islamic Republic had replaced the Shah's dictatorship with a new one. Women who had marched for freedom were now told to wear the hijab. Political parties were banned. Newspapers were closed. Intellectuals and liberals who had supported the revolution found themselves in the same prisons the Shah had built. The revolution had eaten its own children. And the relationship with America? In November 1979, Iranian students stormed the American embassy in Tehran. 52 American diplomats were taken hostage. They were held for 444 days. The wound between Iran and America has never fully healed. And it all traces back to one decision, made in 1953, by men in Washington and London who thought they were protecting their interests, and who never stopped to ask what the Iranian people wanted. This is what happens when powerful countries treat other nations as pieces on a chessboard. The consequences don't stay contained. They spread, they last for decades, and sometimes they last forever. Iran in 1953 was not a perfect country, but it was a country trying to find its own way, with a leader its people had chosen, and a future that was genuinely open. That future was taken away, not by the Iranian people, but by foreign governments who decided they knew better. The Iran we know today, the tension, the sanctions, the nuclear standoff, did not emerge from nowhere. It has roots, and those roots go straight back to 1953. History is not something that happened to other people in another time. It is the ground beneath our feet, and until we understand it honestly, we will keep making the same mistakes. This has been Beyond the Textbook, where history goes deeper than what you were taught. If this changed the way you see the world, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you made it this far, you already know more than most.